Welcome to the reading series, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We're so happy to have Kristen Chandler with us. The English reading series is sponsored by the Department of English and the College of Humanities with help from Rebecca Casanave and Robert Means and our friends at the library. Please do look for links to Kristen's work in the chat window following the introduction. We will also post them a second time to make sure all can see it in the chat. We'll start today with a prayer from Tiana Scott, and following that prayer, an introduction by Kiri Case. And then please remember to join us next week for a reading by Joey Franklin. Tiana.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank thee for this day. We thank thee for this opportunity that we have to all be here together and to attend this reading series. Please bless us, Father, that we will have thy spirit with us and that we'll be able to learn things that will help us improve our writing and help us learn more about the craft of writing. And we say these things in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you for that. It is my pleasure to introduce Kristen Chandler today. Although Chandler was born a storyteller, she didn't actually start writing stories down until she was in her early teens. But when she started, she was hooked. She even asked her dad to send her to Interlochen, Michigan for a creative writing summer camp when she was 16. He said no, but he encouraged her to keep writing. Fortunately for us, she did, and she is now an award-winning YA novelist as well as a creative writing instructor. She has published 3 novels, Girls Don't Fly, Wolves, Boys, and Other Things That Might Kill Me, and Thief of Happy Endings. She also has 2 completed novels that she's currently working on getting published. On her website, Chandler says that she writes for teenagers because she genuinely likes them. In her words, there is something brutal and wonderful about not having a clue who you are. Chandler describes her own teenage years as selfish, competitive, and full of big questions. She spent as much time as possible outside, and when it came to romance, she says, "When I fell for a boy, I nearly broke both legs. I fell so hard." As an adult, Chandler hasn't lost her ability to see life through a teenager's eyes, allowing her to create believably flawed and funny characters and write in an authentic voice that resonates with teenage readers. Chandler spends most of her time writing, teaching here at BYU, and enjoying the great outdoors. On a given day, you can find her running or hiking with her son and cherishing family breakfasts and dinners during her otherwise hectic work schedule. Today, she has kindly taken time out of that hectic schedule to come speak to us. So without further ado, please welcome Kristen Chandler.
Thank you so much for that, Kiri. That was a very generous introduction. And Tiana, I can't see you now, but hi, it's good to see your face again. Well, I am so grateful to be here, even if we're not all together. I cherish the times that we have together, but also it's so great that we can use technology to continue to be connected. And I really like to thank Rebecca Casanave and also Spencer Hyde for inviting me to speak with you today. So I think I'll begin with a reading, but I wanted to also maybe preface it by saying this has probably been quite a week for many people, all of us. And my hope is for this next hour that we can enjoy language and the community of language and just have a good time together. One of the great things about books is they're entertaining, and it's a kind of wonderful healing that we do when we lose ourselves in the love of language. So I'm going to read today from my latest book, Thief of Happy Endings, and it's got a really great cover that I made them break the nose on the guy in the front. But this is a story about a young woman who is very like the children or the teens that I worked with for 5 years, working with at-risk teens. And through my experience working as an equine instructor, I was able to meet a lot of really wonderful, wonderful people who I saw struggling with issues of anxiety and depression, and who felt like they were broken. And so through my interaction with these young people, I wanted to write a story about what these people had shown me and taught me. And I'll just begin. This first chapter is called Before. And maybe I'll put my glasses on because it's after for me. I was too stupid to be scared back then. It was just like the ground had a heartbeat. My grandfather was next to me, snoring like a bagpipe. We were in his big, smelly tent out on the edge of his place. My heartbeat sped up to the pounding I felt coming up from the earth until I jumped up out of my sleeping bag. Everything was going too fast to lie down. I don't know why I didn't wake up my grandfather. Maybe because my grandfather, indulgent as he was not the sort of man I wanted to startle out of a dead sleep. I ran out into the cold morning with my tender city girl feet. All I saw was dirt and sage and the sun sending its first blonde streaks across the pale Wyoming sky. The dam, I felt them. Pound, 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 and even in the wind, I heard the trilling and the snorting of something big. I raced over rocks and thorns to the cliff edge my grandfather threatened me to stay clear of. I ran right to the very precipice and felt the sway of the valley beneath me reaching at my stomach when I got too close. I held my arms out for balance and reeled back. And there they were. Hundreds of Mustangs, all running, all together. Through the swirl of dust they raised, I could see their heads and tails and legs flying all in unison, one big graceful creature moving over the ground like the god of freedom. So hard and fast and fearless, I wondered how they didn't trample one another to bloody pieces. But they didn't. They ran like the wicked wind itself, going who knows where and what for. And then I felt my grandfather's bony hand clamp on my shoulder. He didn't say anything, but I looked up, his face was soft, like it never was. He didn't say anything, like it never was, soft like he was happy and sad all at the same time. And he let go, and we stood there looking at all those horses running together for about one more second before they evaporated over a hill and left nothing but a cloud of dust and a permanent stamp on my little pink brain. It would have been easy for those horses to come a different way, come up on the hill and run me down like August thistle, but that never occurred to me. I thought that stampede was the best thing I'd ever seen because I was young and happy and not afraid. I thought just because something was wild, it was free. And because I loved something, it wouldn't hurt me. Okay, so this is chapter 1. It's a long drive to Wyoming. I stare out the window at dirt, sagebrush, and an endless blue sky. It's as dry and empty as a clay bowl, but the sky is so bright it's nearly blinding. I put my head on my arm and lean against the car door. Then I check the lock. It's fine. I put my head down again. I've been trying to sleep since we left Denver, so I won't have to talk or think, but I can't. Mom doesn't want to talk either. That leaves plenty of time to consider the reasons I shouldn't be going to Wyoming. First, I'm afraid of horses. I didn't used to be, but then I didn't used to be afraid of a lot of things. Second, I haven't exactly been lighting the world on fire lately. As in, I sort of stopped getting out of bed for the last 3 weeks of school. Third, even as a 5'1" slug, I have been the stabilizing influence for my sibs since this difficult time, which is a super crappy way Mom and Dad refer to taking their perfectly storybook marriage and putting it in the garbage disposal. I look at the pink mountains in the distance. Our family wagon drives fearlessly on. I'm glad that something in my life is fearless. I say, the mountains don't seem to be getting any closer. Oh, they're coming, Mom says. Mom's dark waves of hair are pulled up tight onto her head. She doesn't look much like the girl in the framed photograph I found stuffed in the living room drawer a week ago. In it, my parents are standing arm in arm, with the ocean twinkling behind them. Dad's thick hair hangs to his shoulders. Mom's smile is easy and wide. The way she holds herself is billowy and graceful as fabric. Across the bottom of the picture in Dad's messy handwriting are the words, I always knew you were the one. It's probably the sappiest thing Dad has ever written, and my favorite. Before we left this morning, Dad showed up to pick up the sibs. The twins and Wyatt wandered out to the driveway in their pajamas. Jessie Jane and Oakley stood there, shoving their matted mops out of their faces. Oakley started crying, which is typical, and Jessie Jane punched her in the arm to get her to stop, even more typical. Then Wyatt grabbed me like I was going off to war. Why is everyone leaving? I rubbed his fuzzy summer crew cut. Hey, I'll bring you back some magic rocks. He's 7, so we played it cool. Rocks aren't magic. When Dad hugged me, he said, do you really want to do this, Cassidy? You can change your mind. His voice was terse. His dark Irish eyes bored a gut-sized hole in what was left of my resolve. That's a woman's prerogative, you know. Mom said, I paid her deposit, Peter. Get in the car, Cassidy. I hate it when they do this. I'm not choosing between them, but they make it that way. Like about anything, like about everything. I'll be home in a few weeks. He sighed and rubbed his professorly stubble. I'll have my book done by then. You can be my first reader. I can't wait, I said. He smiled in that tight way that feels like he's frowning. Damn it, Cass, just look at you. All this black, shiny hair and a face like a China doll. You stay away from all those cowboys. They're nothing but trouble. He hugs my head to his chest and then lets go. Because every cowboy in Wyoming is looking for a pale, short girl who's afraid to get on a horse. But Dad doesn't need to worry. I'm on a drama-free diet this summer. Thank you very much. It's not just cowboys that are trouble. I look out the window again. For reals, the mountains are not getting any closer. We pass a scenic oil rig sticking its fangs in the ground, and then another, and a tumbleweed blows across the road and gets stuck under the wagon. Mom doesn't seem to notice. She looks as stressed out as I am. I brought some apples if you're hungry, she says. I'm not, I say. A big red semi passes us going the other direction. The draft shakes the wagon. The fumes make me car sick. I sit forward and keep my eyes on the road. It's weird to take this drive after not seeing it in so long. We used to go this way to get to my grandparents' place outside of Cody. The drive is even longer. The road just goes on, winding up to the dust for friggin' ever until you finally hit trees. And then like one bathroom stop later, you're into the mountains so fierce you can't even see the tops of them from inside your car. The landscape in Wyoming doesn't mess around. When I was little, I could barely hold still. I was so into going to see my grandparents. My head would be all tingly when we'd start early in the morning, and Dad would buy a big box of donuts and he would put it in the back seat with me and the twins. I thought of the ranch like my own private amusement park. And I was the star of the show until I got bucked off into the fence and sort of brought the house down. I didn't die, obviously. Just a concussion and a scar on the back of my head where my hair didn't grow back. But Dad was pissed about the whole thing. Mom had Wyatt a few months later, and then my grandparents died before any of this got sorted out. You feeling okay this morning? Asked Mom. I shrug my shoulders and smile. But truthfully, I don't know how I feel. Scared, I guess. I let Mom calm me into this trip by showing me old pictures of myself at Grandpa's ranch. Happy, stupid, riding bareback, riding double with Mom, standing on the backs of horses. I look so all-out audacious, so much cooler than I am now. Somehow, I fell for my own advertisement. Mom tries to pretend she isn't checking her cell phone every 5 seconds to see if Dad is taking care of the kids. The twins will be okay, but Wyatt is so hyper, he wears out our dog, Kid. I can't think about Wyatt or I'll jump out of the car and go after him. What did Mr. Coulter do for Grandpa again? Mom doesn't talk about Grandpa and Grandma. Neither of my parents talk about their parents. Dad doesn't get along with his folks. But I think the opposite is true for Mom. She misses her parents so much. I miss them too. Once in a while, she'll tell a story about growing up on the ranch with no television and one bathroom, or about how tough Grandpa was or how sweet Grandma was. But she almost always ends up with her voice cracking. And Mom hates to cry like a cat hates to swim. She made an exception to talk me into doing this. Mom says, Coulter worked for Daddy as a foreman, but I think he stuck around because he liked your grandmother's cooking. It was awfully nice of him to squeeze you in and let you do the work scholarship. I just have to do extra cleaning every day? Yeah, exactly. So pretty much like home, and it will save me a bundle. She rotates her head to look at me. Did you notice I put your grandpa's hat in the back there? It's probably still too big, but it'll keep the sun off. The hat in my closet. I didn't notice. I look in the back seat and see the black thing perched on the seat. It has a small pheasant feather in a black band. I always thought it looked like a bad guy's hat. I told Mom I didn't want it in my room because it smelled like cigarettes, but truthfully, it just made me feel funny. That's why I shoved it in the closet. You want me to wear that? She sighs and passes an ancient farm truck. Think of it as a talisman. Aren't talismans supposed to do stuff? Like make you invisible? Mom's smart about Englishy things like talismans. She was an English major until she met Dad and switched to accounting. A talisman is supposed to give you good luck, that's all. Well, why did he leave it to me in the first place? It's way too big. Who knows, says Mom. Maybe just to remember him by. Or to haunt me. He was mad about me giving up horses, wasn't he? I don't think he was mad at you a day in his life. Your grandfather loved you very much. He'd be proud of you for doing this. I turn around and look at the hat again, sitting alone on the seat. I'm just saying, maybe it's not exactly good luck. It's gotten you this far, she says. We drive for a long way without talking. Everything turns flat and barren. Like nothing grows out here but the dirt and rocks I promised to bring Wyatt. And nothing looks very magical. I turn on the radio to slow down the churning in my stomach, but only get static in a Christian station. I wonder if I packed enough clothes. Then, in the middle of all the silence, Mom says, You don't remember the accident at all? Just what you've told me. That the horse bolted, I split my head open on the fence and got 20 stitches. 30. But don't worry about it. The past is the past, right? She smiles and pushes my shoulder with her fingertips. I look back at the hat following me in the back seat. Right, I say. We watch the dirt turn to grass, then the grass to hills, then the hills to mountains. Just like I remember it, both sides of the road become vertical angles, and then we turn and we're winding on a gravel road. I feel hard pressure on the car. I check the lock on the door again. It's the wind, says Mom. That's what they make most of in Wyoming. When I think I can't sit still one more minute, the mountains part and we come to a four-way stop with a thin green sign that says, Point of No Return Youth Ranch, with a small white arrow pointing left. I've seen parking stalls with bigger signs. When Mom showed me the website for this place, I thought she was kidding. What kind of a name is that for a summer camp? Is it like a correctional facility? She said, it's a leadership camp where you train Mustangs and learn leaderly things. Leadership with horses? I made a gagging sound. Isn't that code for messed up rich kids? Apply now? Last time I checked, I was only one of those. Like I told you, the man that owns the place, Tim Coulter, is an old family friend. He said we could work out the tuition. He also said that they get all kinds at this place, including kids with reasons for being away from home for the summer. There's nothing wrong with that. So I'll be doing manual labor with banished, potentially deranged rich kids at a ranch with wild horses. Wow, I feel better already. She pointed at me and pointed at the screen full of smiling teenagers chopping wood and sitting on perfectly behaved equine specimens. Okay, the kids in the pictures did look like they were having fun. I'm sure because they were told if they didn't, they wouldn't get rations. And the mountains looked sort of breathtaking, but it was the one line of the website Schmooze Fest that really got me. Whatever your personal mountains are, they'll look smaller after you've lived in ours. I thought that was good manipulative writing, and I can appreciate that. I mean, I guess I get the whole what doesn't kill you makes you stronger bit, but I still don't see how horses, which actually can kill you, can really make racing thoughts and stomach cramps go away. Mom turns left and keeps her eyes on the road. You need to get away from the mess to get better, Cass. I know it's going to be hard, but I want you to try and tough it out until the end of summer. Sometimes you just have to ride things out. I count 10 telephone poles before I say what I'm thinking. Are you and Dad trying to ride things out? Mom tightens her grip on the steering wheel. Don't worry about that right now, Cassidy. This summer, your job is to ride horses and worry about yourself. I'd love to do something like this. It's a once-in-a-lifetime thing. In front of us, the canyon splits, open to a primeval-looking mountain range jutting up in a crayon blue sky. Even though it's June, there's still snow on the peaks. On the other side of the road, the wind bends wild grass to the ground. Out of nowhere, a hawk dive bombs the car. Red tail, Mom says, pointing. The hawk circles in front of the car once and then flies off. I roll down the window. Wind floods into the car. The air outside the car is so clean I can actually smell the wildflowers jabbing up on the roadside. I turn to Mom. Have I ever been here before? No, she smiles. Does it seem like it? After a few minutes, we see a cloud of dust blow up over a ridge. The cloud is in a canyon opening surrounded by scrubby trees. It looks like a tornado coming from the ground. Is that a dust devil? Mom pulls the car over and reaches for her binoculars in the glove box. Of course she has binoculars in the glove box. Will you look at that, she says. You have a welcome committee. What? Mustangs. I read there are a few wild bands left in the area. That cloud is horses? Just running loose? She hands me the binoculars. I put the heavy black lenses to my face. I move the glass back and forth, but all I see is dust swirling in the gnarled branches like ghosts. But that tingly feeling I had when I was a kid fills my head. Now it comes with butterflies in my stomach. I look around me at all the open space. I can't believe this is where I'm spending my summer. At last, we drive under a wooden archway with a sign that says Point of No Return and a big dead pine wreath swinging under it in the wind. We drive up over a quick hill into a valley surrounded by a pine and aspen dotted hills. Late afternoon clouds float overhead. Down in the valley, there's an old 2-story ranch house with great big windows and a deep wraparound porch. Bright yellow flowers spurt all around the outside of the house. How pretty, says Mom. Yeah, I say. Next to the main house is a large fenced pasture, one big arena and a small one, a long gray horse barn, and something that looks like a red doll house, maybe a chicken coop. The pasture is full of shaggy horses. Just the sight of all those horses makes my stomach flip-flop, and then flip-flop again. Dang, I don't want to be this scared. Maybe I can just take care of the chickens. I could fit in there. Down the road are barrack-style tents that I'm going to guess that is where they stash the campers in question. Behind the tents are some small one-room cabins, and in front are 4 wooden outhouses. Mom says, that's rustic. I don't have to clean those, right? Can you even clean an outhouse? No. I'm sure those are just backup facilities. A man wearing a denim shirt and an actual red kerchief tied around his neck walks up to the truck as we start to unload. He tips his chocolate-colored hat to us just long enough for me to see a short black hair with a white skunk stripe in the front. Welcome, I'm Darius Pike, head babysitter and bottle washer here at Point of No Return. Are you the Kerrigans? Yes, it's nice to meet you, Mr. Pike. Mom puts out her hand graciously. Oh, just call me Darius. We're pretty informal up here in the sticks. It's a pleasure to meet the descendants of Guthrie Parker. Mom brightens. Did you know my dad, Darius? She asks. No, but I heard the story. He's quite a guy. His face seems snagged to one side, like he's got a permanent smirk. Yes, he was, she says. Over by the outhouses, I hear kids' voices. Darius taps the dirt with his boot. Well, thanks for coming and dropping her off, Mrs. Kerrigan. You have a great summer. Oh, Mom's face drops. I think for a minute she's going to break down. I'd love to see Mr. Coulter if I could. Shouldn't I help Cassidy set up her room? Coulter's not around right now. Don't worry about your daughter. She looks like she can roll out her own sleeping bag. He taps his hand on my back, which I don't like. We'll take good care of her. Have a safe trip home. My mom's been driving since early this morning, I say. I turn to her. She's making the worry face. Maybe you should rest or walk around before you go. Oh no, I'm fine. Mom tries to open the car door, but the handle sticks. She pumps the latch. I think I should do it for her, but I don't want to embarrass her. She leans through the car window and jumps back out again, holding my grandfather's hat. Do you want this then? I nod. Words aren't my best thing at the moment. She puts the hat on my head. It drops over one eye. Still a little big, huh? Should I put it back in the car? Her voice is shaking. No, it's fine, just fine. I tried to sound enthusiastic, but what I want is to get back in the car and drive straight back to my room and climb under the covers. But what if something happens to me up here? I can't let her see me panicking. Will you be okay driving home, Mom? She puts her hands on her shoulders and looks me right in the eyes. I'll be fine. Cass, honey, I want you to stop trying to rescue everyone else and just rescue yourself for a few weeks. She smiles. Do what Mr. Coulter says and don't worry about me or anyone else at home. Is that clear? Oh, I'm worrying about myself right now, in addition to my messed up family. But as terrified as I am of staying here, if I go home, I'll just keep being a mess. And I will have to face every person who thought I couldn't do this. I will be the chicken they think I am. I will be the chicken I think I am. I'm practically growing feathers just standing here. Mom looks at Darius and then looks at me, reading my mind in that psychic way she has. You don't have to do this, Cass. I say, no, I'm good, totally good. See you in August, okay? I smile and act like I'm checking my bag so I don't have to look in her eyes. She's put a deposit down. I'm doing this. I can't believe I'm doing this. Mom lets out a gasp of air, which may be a tad dramatic. You sure? I nod. 100% not sure. Then she gives me one really good long hug and one quick one after that. And before you can say hyperventilate, she's gone, leaving nothing more than red dust behind her. And then wham, I'm standing next to a guy in a bandana 100 years from anywhere. Okay, so that's a lot of reading. I hope you're still awake somewhere, but I'd love to answer any questions you have. Okay, so it looks like I have a comment here. I love the raw and complex emotion portrayed in the first chapter. What insight can you give about conveying a sense of strong, genuine emotion without falling into sentimentality or cheesiness? Well, truthfully, I think that's a question of first and second drafts. I think that if you are consciously saying to yourself as you're writing your first draft, don't be cheesy, don't be sentimental, you will probably censor some of your best writing. I don't think you should be an editor in your first draft. So write it all, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And then when you go back, ask yourself if you've earned the right to ask for those feelings in your character. It's a difficult thing, but I think oftentimes, for me, if I read it out loud, I can just hear whether it sounds like it's too much. Let's see, on your website, you teach that the important thing about writing is it involves risk and discipline and fear, first fear, and then the other two. This stuck out to me because I never thought about writing in that way. What makes you describe writing in that way, and how are these qualities present in your own work? Well, it's a great question. I do believe that we have these primal emotions, and they're usually in the place that we write about the universal. There's always the relationship between the specific and the universal. And so if I'm afraid of spiders, my reader might not be afraid of spiders, but they understand what it means to be afraid of something. And so I think that's often a way to connect into something that many people can understand and appreciate. But I think when we talk about things we're afraid of, or we write about things that we're afraid to understand, we stop posturing and we're honest. And I think there's very little that's more engaging than a truly honest voice. So and also I just think it's interesting, you know, fear comes from conflict, and we're always interested in conflict. Okay. Let's see, another question here is, how much do you identify with Cassidy or share experiences with her? So, as I mentioned at the beginning, I think there's probably a lot of me and Cassidy. One of the things that is true for me about this book is that for a while I stopped writing. I had some kind of difficult things happen in my life. And as those things started to accumulate, I felt like I was laying at the bottom of this barrel looking up at the sky. But the thing about being at the bottom of the barrel is you feel the bottom and you kind of think, well, okay, this is where I am and I'm still alive and I'm still doing it. I can handle that. And now I can try things and I can fail and it's okay because I'll just end up back here. That's the worst I can do. So I feel like there are a lot of things that I relate to about Cassidy, but really the thing that inspired me to write the book was working with teens who just, they inspired me. And I saw them fight back to escape the depression that was collapsing their lives, and to, you know, these people that were dealing with things that were legitimately very difficult in their lives, just take this opportunity to risk and to do something, you know, take a good risk. And I'm such a believer in good risk and how that builds our confidence and builds our sense of what we can accomplish and who we are. And so I guess that's what inspired me to write the book and the story that I wanted to tell. Horses, what made me choose horses in Wyoming? Well, I do love horses. I rode horses from the time I was very little. I got bucked off horses when I was little. And I guess I just, horses helped heal me. And I looked around and I saw in my own family and I saw in other people that sometimes what we need is we need someone else to care for so that we can heal ourselves. And horses are good for that. I also love to write about wide open spaces, and Wyoming is a really interesting place. My writing tends to be more terse, which is compatible with the vernacular of Wyoming, although I have characters from all over the country and one from out of the States in the novel. So it's diverse in terms of the cast of the crew that Cassidy meets. But I don't know, I just think there's something very transformative about being away from our natural habitat, and it gives us a chance to reinvent ourselves. And You know, I'm sure you've all heard this expression that most novels are about a stranger came to town. I love it when my character is the stranger that comes to town. That's really fun because I think most books are about identity, and that's a good way to set up that conflict. How did you get your first book published? How did getting your first book published change your writing process? Oh, that's a great question. So I had read before I got published about an author who had this dream of walking around. Well, he actually did this. When he got his first paycheck, he just took the check from getting published and he just wore it in his shirt for a long time before he went to cash it because it was so great. And I often dreamed about how when I got published, you know, I would have arrived and everything would be perfect after that. And of course, you know, that's kind of not how life is. But what happens after your first book is that you realize that writing is also a business. And so you're trying to do readings and go to school, do, in my case, school visits, and to do your social media, which I wasn't really comfortable with in the beginning. And you're talking with people about different business aspects, and you have to balance that with your writing. And now there's a certain expectation. And luckily for me, while my first book, Wolves, Boys, and Other Things That Might Kill Me, was getting through the publication process, I was fast at work on Girls Don't Fly. And so I didn't get that sophomore paralysis that a lot of people get, where their first book does well and then they feel like I have writer's block, because I was really very, you know, lost in my next work before any people on Goodreads had a chance to tell me what to do and not to do in my writing. But I think that it's probably a bad idea to read reviews. That's one thing I learned after I got my first, because the good reviews go to your head and the bad reviews go to your head. So you probably just shouldn't read either of them. But yeah. How did you get your first book published? Okay, yeah. So, how many drafts do you typically do for a novel? See, that question always sort of blows me away, because I write the first draft as a draft, but after that, it's just a series of revisions. I think of it as, you know, one complete draft, second complete draft, you know, that. But I write many, many drafts of a novel. And the first time I got a book published, it was such an education about the difference between a book that is good enough for an editor to buy and a book that is good enough to be published. There is so much that goes into that publication experience. So there's a lot of revision that happens even after you sell your book. You know, I was just cracking up when people from New York were calling me up and asking me, well, do wolves really do this? And they asked me all these specific questions. And luckily, I had very carefully done my homework, so I didn't have too many problems. But if you're writing realistic fiction, you should get it right, because they will ask. Surprisingly, they will ask. They say you burn a bridge between adulthood and childhood as you grow up. How are you able to maintain such a strong teenage feeling? Well, yes. I mean, I'm probably very immature for my age, so that helps. But I think it's because I love teenagers. I mean, this was mentioned earlier, but I love college age students. That's why I teach college, because I love that liberty of discovery that people still allow themselves. I read once that men seldom change their haircut after college. It just falls out, you know. And I thought, what? You never want to try something crazy with your hair after college? It's too soon. You should do all kinds of crazy things with your clothes and your hair and everything all through your life. But I think that you can live your life that way, but I really love the way teens and young adults embrace discovery of identity. And so I guess I love capturing that. And there's so many firsts when you're a teenager, you know, your first kiss, your first time away from home, the first time you use a credit card, you know, just all these crazy things. It's so fresh and interesting, and it makes you so vulnerable. So I guess immaturity and that other thing. But so the next question is, how is writing YA different literature than those that intended for adults? So I started out writing for adults, and I think one of the very exciting things about literature right now is that there are so many ways you can go about it that people appreciate. It's the niche market is so expansive. You can't say what is acceptable and not acceptable anymore. But I think one of the ways that writing for teens is different than writing literary fiction for adults is that you have to have a story. Okay, now I know that sounds judgmental, but teens and younger, even younger, you have to have a story, because if you don't, they'll stop reading. You have to compete with TikTok, you know? So you better get your story moving on the first page. You better not take a long way around, and you don't necessarily have to kill somebody on the first page, but you have to have a story, and it has to matter. There has to be emotion, and there has to be something at risk. And all those traditional elements of story have been questioned in adult and young adult fiction. I think they're all different ways to tell a story, but I think that there is a kind of discriminating law of writing for kids of all ages that you need to have a real storyline, a narrative arc. Your character shouldn't be the same at the end as they are at the beginning. But that's perhaps my bias. Do you have any exercises or suggestions on how to continue writing when you don't want to? Oh, great question. Either laziness or the active feeling of wanting to do something, anything else. Well, maybe, I mean, there are two ways to look at this. Sometimes when you're taking your story in a bad direction, your subconscious is telling you that. And so it becomes difficult to write. And so you might need to listen to that. You might need to walk around the block and realize that your writer's block, or whatever you call it, is really kind of a warning, stupid detour sound in your head. But I think more often than not, I'm going to compare it to horses. Oftentimes when I would have students come to the barn to ride the horse and they had a bad ride, they got, maybe they even got bucked off, or the horse did something scary, or just didn't listen to them. And it was just a bad experience. I'm just thinking, shoot. I would always promise them that if you will come back next week, you will have a good ride. But you have to come back next week. And the students that came back the next week, instead of getting scared or frustrated, they did. They had great rides, and I could never explain why. But it's just, maybe they just got in the place that they were ready to do it, and it clicked. And I feel like that has happened to me so often as a writer. When I'm so angry, when I'm stuck in the middle of a novel and I just hate it and I hate myself and I'm a horrible person to be around, so I have to go stay out my writing house so I can stay away from my family and not be mean. If I will just sit down and push and keep writing until something good happens, it'll be the best thing I've written in a week. So I think if you just can remember that it's usually darkest before the dawn. It usually is. It really is. So maybe that can be motivational. But when I'm really just, like kind of having that middle frustration kind of thing where I'm just feeling lazy or unmotivated, or it's just not happening, or I'm tired or something, I turn on instrumental music, not classical music, but instrumental music like soundtracks and things that kind of amp me up without distracting me too much. And that helps. And then I eat chocolate. Don't do that, but that's what I do. I eat chocolate. Cheers me up a little bit, gives me a little zip. And before I know it, I'm back at work and I'm lost in the character, and it works out. So. All right. Have you ever personally gotten stuck in your story plot? If so, how did you overcome it? Okay, I'm not sure about this question, so if you want to type a clarification, that would be great. But let me just tell you something really scary about me. This is, well, I'm not making this up, but I am making this up. That things that I write in my novels happen to me in my life. So I have to be careful what I write about my novel. This is why I've never written a novel about, well, until this summer, I had never written a novel about a child being abducted, because when my kids were a little bit younger, that was a big fear that I had, and that they would get lost or abducted. And so I could never write that, because I have literally had so many things that I have written in the novel and then it shows up in my life. And it's a kind of a joke in my family, but my latest example of that is one of the novels that I wrote after Thief, that is now kind of on hold for a minute, is about a pandemic. And I submitted it literally last November. So I do get lost in my story, but not in the way you maybe meant. And that is a little weird. I don't know why that happens, but that's just a thing. But when I get lost in my plot, one of the things that I do that I think is really helpful is I go back to the premise or the emotion that inspired me to write. So there's usually a feeling that is very primal that I can go back to as a touchstone, and a scene that I go back to a scene that I feel like really worked, and I hear the voice working and I think, okay, that's the voice. So where do we go now? But another thing that really works is I usually get some book buddies. And what I mean by that is I find some books that I find inspiring that are similar to what I'm writing. They're in the same genre. Not, I'm not copying the books, but it's like having a friend. And I choose books that have really great language, that have really great stories. And I just read them out loud to myself. And it's like priming the pump. I just listen to them, and it's like talking to an old friend. I know what the story is. I know how it's going to go. And it reminds me of what a good story is. And it reminds me of what beautiful language is. And before I know it, I want to do that too. I want to write a beautiful story with great language and fierce characters. And so it just motivates me to go back to my own work. It doesn't even have to be a book that's that similar. If it's the kind of book that makes you want to write, then you just kind of keep that next to your computer, and when you're feeling really down, just remember why you started writing in the first place.
Well, thank you so much for that wonderful reading, Kristen.
Thank you so much, Spencer. I appreciate it.
It's so nice to talk about stories instead of everything else that's going on.
Yes,
I really appreciate the break and the time with you. I wish you could see the faces of the 100 people here. But thank you all for joining the reading series this week. And don't forget to visit the links in the chat window to Kristen's work. Also, please remember, same time next week for a reading by Joey Franklin. We'll see you next time.
Thank you so much.